I'm actually a migratory beekeeper. I chase the bloom. There are many varieties of honey all over the world. Most of the honey you buy in the supermarket is a blend because you put the bees in one place, they'll fly as far as 3 miles and collect nectar from every flower that they find. But if you can find a location where there's only one flowering plant in the range these bees can fly, they're going to come back with only one kind of nectar, and it's going to make what we call a monofloral honey. We're actually on the dry side of the Big Island of Hawaii, where it's a desert, but there's a type of tree that thrives in that habitat. We're going to a bee yard right now where I make a monofloral honey from the kiawe tree. This is the beekeeper's toolbox right here. Smoker and a hive tool. You need the hive tool to pry off the lids because the bees produce a substance called propolis, which is like a glue. If you gently smoke the beehive, it calms the bees down. So if they smell smoke, instead of stinging you, they're trying to eat as much honey as they can because they know they have to flee. The best beekeepers got drawn to bees very young in life. They can open the lid off of a hive and just the smell and the sound, they know what's going on.
Bees are a really important part of that whole, ecosystem and life process. The bees make honey by going from flower to flower, gathering nectar. They'll swallow it, they'll take it back to the hive, and then they'll regurgitate it. I've lived in Hawaii all my life. I love this place. It's where my roots are. It's my home, When a bee stings you, they die right after. I would do the same thing to protect my home. So I can kind of relate to it.
There we are, beautiful, fresh, pure kiawe honey. Since this one's ready to go, I'll pop the whole box off, and then we'll take it back to the honey house and extract it.
Good morning, team. Good morning. Today we've got 64 drums of Colorado honey coming in. Line 1, 24 barrels of clover honey. Line 2, 48 drums of Southwest honey. Is there any questions or concerns? No. Okay, let's go blend some honey.
When we receive the honey off the trucks, we'll set aside different barrels for testing. We run a color test, a moisture test, viscosity and turbidity, and that way we can verify right away whether it meets our product spec. Once the testing is complete, we move it into our storage facility where we put the honey up in racks. And then ultimately we move that honey from the warehouse into our warming room for blending. When we get into our blend batching, there's a bit of a science and an art to what we do. Bees will travel to different nectar sources and different floral. And when they do that, they're bringing back the different colors, the different flavors of that nectar. And of course, because there's different floral and nectar in different parts of the United States, we can create a unique flavor profile from all those different beekeepers across the country. Putting the clover in, for example, with the orange, instead of having an overbearing orange flavor, you're going to have more of a citrus note to it. So it's a really unique flavor profile than a very intense orange or a clover by itself. So that's the art behind it. Kind of like a chef in the kitchen when they're taking different ingredients, putting it in a dish, making that flavorful product that they're making. Well, we're doing the same thing here. For the last 5 years, I've been working with beekeepers around the United States, and I thought, what a better way to get to know the beekeeper than to have my own hives. And the importance of the bee and the honeybee for pollination is critical for almonds and for other fruits and vegetables and for our ecosystem. It's a domino effect. What we do allows for the beekeeper to do what they do. It allows for those farmers where the bees are and the hives are to do what they do. And it allows for all of us as consumers to enjoy the end product of honey. And to me, just being a part of that process and a very small part of that process is very rewarding.
Mead is simply a wine made from honey instead of grapes.
We feel that our main objective as mead makers is to try to preserve as much of the flavor compounds that are in the honey as possible. And the reason that's important is because the flavor compounds in honey are the flavor compounds that come from the flower. And what we want our customers to taste is the nectar of the flower from which the honey was composed. So we're transferring that juice into stainless steel tanks, and then we're inoculating it with a champagne yeast. We are adding to that base wine a very carefully measured quantity of cane sugar. We're mixing all of that together in the bottling tank. Bottles lay on their side to go through a secondary fermentation, and is what facilitates the natural effervescence. And then we get to riddling and disgorgement, migrating the sediment in the bottle. And it's a process of tipping the bottle upside down and shaking it slowly so that we end up with a sediment in the neck of the bottle. We can then use a machine called a neck freezer, and because there's pressure inside a bottle of champagne, it shoots that plug of sediment out like a bullet, and voila, we've got a bottle of sparkling wine with no sediment in it.
This is champagne, but just using honey instead of grapes. We say the closest you can get to actually tasting a flower, short of actually eating it. It's a monofloral honey, but completely wildly sourced. The nectar of that flower will give the flavor profile of this mead.
You can really smell the honey.
I enjoy working with my hands. I like the idea of producing something that's coming from the earth. Terroir is the sense of a place, whether it's wine or food. Every place brings its own characteristics, whether it's the soil, whether it's the climate. Those flowers create a sense of place for a honey.
When we crack open a hive and we check on the brood chamber, I see my queen and she's doing great. It's the best place to be.
Now this is gorgeous. That's exactly what I want to see.
We receive these large barrels of honey, but when you really understand the backstory and how that honey ended up in that barrel, it starts with the bee and it evolves through the beekeepers managing those hives, and that whole process in of itself is fascinating.
The style in which we make mead is revealing the flavor characteristics of that flower. This is a unique window that we have to experience the flavors that the honeybee is experiencing when it goes to a flower to collect nectar. We're attracted to the same things the honeybees are.